Lawyers of Reddit, what was your oh shit moment in court? Reposting myself from years ago. Story from a friend of mine. He was defending a guy in court. Don't remember what he was charged with. The main witness for prosecution was on the stand and was asked if she could identify the defendant. She was scanning the courtroom and seemed confused. My friend was already silently celebrating because if she couldn't identify him, he could probably get all charge dropped. As he was mentally adding this case to the win file, he happened to glance over at his client, who had just helpfully raised his hand to make it easier for her to identify him. Even the judge face palmed on that one. Watching a hearing when the defendant said, I did stab her. But it was a gentle stabbing. Reminds me of something I read on here where the person said I hit her with a knife. Stabbing. That's called stabbing. He ran into my knife. He ran into my knife 10 times. Never ask a question to which you don't know the answer. Prosecutor suggested to me client that the canned goods he had burgled were to be used to trade for drugs. Me thinking the idea ludicrous, asked my client whether he has ever traded food for drugs. To which he replied that he once exchanged a frozen chicken for heroin. Needless to say, I didn't win that one. Sat in the public gallery at a bail hearing for a man accused of heinous crimes against a very young female relative. The judge started laying out the conditions of bail and one of them was to surrender his passport. Man turned to his attorney and said, loudly, words to the effect of, but you said I could fly back to my home country. The judge stopped himself and revoked the man's bail. A lawyer I used to know was in court on a work injury case. The judge asked his client, just what is the nature of your injury? His client replied, I can't raise my arm this high anymore, while she raised her arm up to show just how high she couldn't raise it. When I was in college, I was a bailiff. Guy is on trial for murder. First witness testified that she saw the defendant shoot the victim. Second witness states the same. Police officer testimony is that he arrived at the scene and defendant was there holding the gun. Coroner testimony is that the first bullet hit the victim in the arm, the second bullet hit the victim in the torso and the third bullet hit the victim in the heart, which was the fatal shot. Defendant yells out, see, that proves that I didn't kill him. I only shot the motherfrapper twice. Person I was representing was on trial for assault in the 3rd degree and DUI. In my state, A3 means you've assaulted an aid worker or police officer and is a felony. The allegations are that he was very verbally abusive to the officers and, at one point, kicked one in the face. We're sitting at the defendant's table and the officer is testifying about the statements my guy made to him, including some pretty horrific name calling. Out of nowhere, my client screams, you're a freaking liar. Frap you son of a bitch, we lost that trial. Another time, the judge asked a client whether anyone had coerced him into pleading guilty, and he said, yeah, my attorney. I about shit my pants, but he laughed and said, I'm joking. No. Not in court but a deposition. Plaintiff in a sexual harassment case that was suspected to be paid role play with her boss, kept a very detailed sex diary on her work computer. At one point she was asked to read from the diary for the record and asked if she had written the accounts and if they were true. She was asked at several points if she wanted her new husband to leave the room while she did this, but declined. Let's just say it was extremely kinky. She confirmed it was true. And the only mention of her now husband was that he was boring in bed, but she was going to marry him because she couldn't get her first, second or third choice. He ended up leaving on his own after she read that part out and confirmed it was him she was writing about. Not a lawyer, but was working at the jail when an inmate came back from court and immediately went on suicide watch. Apparently he was up for a plea deal and was only looking at 6 months, but started questioning some of the facts, which let in a ton of previously denied evidence. This new evidence linked him to 6B and E's and rapes. He walked out of court facing a 99-year sentence, which he was certain to get. All because he opened his mouth. I was prosecuting a contempt action in family court, something that basically never works, and everyone in the room could tell I was winning. The other side was unprepared, out of arrogance, and I was basically ripping this guy to shreds on cross-examination, which his lawyer didn't even think would happen, because he expected the case to be dismissed. At the end of the trial, the judge ruled for me and stated that she found the defendant's testimony to be untrustworthy. I was shocked at winning a contempt trial to begin with, but then this exchange happened. Defendant's attorney, Your Honor, now that you have found my client's testimony to be untrustworthy, I am requesting a continuance in order to prepare further witnesses. This concept is shocking in and of itself, because to even think you can bring more witnesses after you rest your case is laughable. Judge, you had your shot and you missed. Counsel, defendant's attorney, Your Honor, there was no way I could have anticipated that you'd find my client's testimony untrustworthy and as such, I didn't have the opportunity to prepare other witnesses in support of his position. Judge, that may be an argument for your career, counsel, but it holds no water with me. See you this afternoon for sentencing. For those who didn't pick up on it, the judge basically told the lawyer on the record in front of his client that she expects him to get sued for malpractice because he fucked up so royally. That shit was mind-blowing on multiple levels. Not exactly in court, but I was defending a juvenile robbery case, where there was very little evidence. There was supposed to be 2 guys, but they only picked up this one kid. He had no stolen property on him. He was picked up like outside his own house, wearing different clothes than the victim had initially said. This kid was on the honor roll at school. His family seemed kind and were involved. He wrote poetry and played instruments. I actually believed it was a legit mistaken identity case. I went to meet with one of the kid's mentors for a character reference, and he exactly matched the description of the other robber. Sitting in court, doing simply paperwork with a defense attorney for a go-home plea agreement, where person is released from custody and doesn't have to do jail time. We hear this KSSSSSSSSTT show to our left and we look to see his guy sitting in the galley all by himself, sitting in the cloud of a biggest vape hit I have ever seen. Then has the audacity to tell the judge it went off in his hand, do not pass go, do not go free that day. Lawyer here. I had a pre-trial conference at 9 AM at a court about 2 hours away. So I wake my ass up super early to drive in shitty weather to the conference. I get there and we're waiting for the other, in town, attorney. All the while I'm grumbling to myself about how I'm from out of town and I can still make it on time. Finally the court calls the other attorney's office and gets a receptionist who tells us through tears that other attorney passed away the night before. Needless to say I was just happy to still be alive and we rescheduled for a few months later. Rude of him not to inform you he was going to die the night before. Not a lawyer, but I had a big oh shit moment. I was in court for driving while suspended in a county and in front of a judge that were both notorious for putting people who did that in jail. My license wasn't supposed to be suspended. A pencil pusher forgot to press a button or something and it never got unsuspended after the time was up. I had proof of this, but I was still really nervous. The guy who went up to the judge before me walked to the table where we were supposed to stand, sat down, and put his feet up on the table. The judge asked him what he was doing and he gave a flippant answer and basically told the judge to get f***ed. This seriously pissed the judge off. The judge went off on this guy and the guy gave everything right back to him, pissing him off more and more. The judge ended up jailing him for contempt and had the bailiff cuff the guy and put him in a chair off to the side to await the marshals who would transport him to the jail. My name gets called. The judge is looking at me like I'm fresh meat and he is a great white shark. I'm already thinking to myself, okay, if this judge puts you in jail, run over and beat the shit out of the guy that pissed the judge off so badly. He's why you're going to jail. The judge looks down at his paperwork and back at me and says, "Your MR my last name?" I said, "Yes sir." He said, "Yeah, we were talking about you earlier. I'm going to void your arrest and dismiss this case. Your license was supposed to be valid and you shouldn't be here." I let out a huge sigh. The judge asked me if I was okay and I said I had been a bit worried, especially given the guy that was right before me in line. The judge said, "Don't worry about him. He won't be seeing anything that isn't behind bars for about 90 days, and laughed. I was a baby lawyer in my first year representing the 19-year-old child of some rich people in San Mateo County, CA. My client had gone on a bit of a shoplifting spree and we were cleaning all her cases up with a global plea, meaning we handled them all at once. Being new, I filled out the plea form wrong, swapping the counts she was charged with for the counts she was pleading to. It's an easy mistake to make. Every court has their own unique form and I was unfamiliar with San Mateo's. The judge calls my line, starts reading off the plea form, notices the mistake and then starts screaming at the top of his lungs, "Counsel. What is this? What is this? Is this your first day on the job? This is a court of law and we do not accept mistakes. Fill this plea form correctly or I will have you taken into custody for contempt." I did not expect a reaction like that. My client, who had clearly just taken a huge bong rip at 8 AM and who was wearing an all pink velvet tracksuit, was looking at me like I was the biggest idiot in the world. I corrected the plea form. The judge made me wait until the very end of the calendar to take my plea. Afterward, he called me up to the bench. In private he told me, "Sorry to ream you like that. Everyone messes the plea form up, so I always pick the youngest lawyer to yell at. The older guys will grumble and complain, but if you noticed they all fixed their own forms and we didn't have any more problems. Keeps the calendar running smooth." "Where did you go to law school?" After that he invited me into his office for coffee and gave me some really good life work advice. Turns out he likes talking to new lawyers.